Hey there, welcome to Millennium Milestone Presents, a site dedicated to storytelling in books, movies, video games, and other exciting genres. Hoping you'll like, share, and subscribe before this message self-destruct. Well, at long last, we finally get Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, the two-parter to the end of a era of movies that spanned quite a number of decades, starting with 1996's Mission Impossible, starring Tom Cruise, who, guess what, is starring in the final reckoning of this series, if I could even throw another pun or two into this. I gotta say, I was definitely excited to go see this movie, especially since this was something that was planned by Tom Cruise to be out probably within the past 3 or 4 years, but due to the pandemic and other things that happened throughout the time, we were limited to what could be done in terms of filming for this. So I want to get it out of the way that I give a lot of credit to Tom Cruise for fighting against a lot of different odds to get this movie out there. Production was stalled for quite a bit, and it was very difficult for him to even work around a lot of different rules they had to work with to get this movie out there. I do want to put it out there that I do have fair criticisms of the film, so I'm not going to be just cheerleading for Tom Cruise about the film, but I do want to be clear that I'm going to be giving an honest take on this, regardless of what I just said momentarily. So to start off with, as usual, I usually like to go right off the positives, and some of the things that do come to mind, of course, is that this does feel like a Mission Impossible movie. It does have stakes and dread in the midst of this entire story, and you do feel like at any given point something is going to happen, good or bad. You just don't know when that's going to be. So to start off with, let's recap a little bit what went on before this movie. The events leading up to Mission Impossible Final Reckoning see Ethan Hunt and his team grappling with the Entity, a powerful artificial intelligence introduced in Dead Reckoning Part 1. The Entity has caused widespread disruption, aims to take control of the world's global nuclear systems. Ethan and his team are on a mission to shut down the Entity, battling against Gabriel, a rogue agent who is helping the Entity at the same time. So we now open to the movie with Ethan getting a sort of recap of what's gone on in his life up until this point, and now he has surmised that the only way to get the codes to take care of the Entity are in the midst of a submarine that sunk several years ago, and Ethan has to find a way to locate the submarine wherever it may have sunk. So this sets the stage for a long-spanning mission that goes along several continents just to make this mission work, as, of course, the title Mission Impossible always implies in any mission that they take on in this. So the premise of this, I have no problem with it. It's absolutely fantastic in its own right. I do find that the previous movie, Dead Reckoning, did a better job of summing that all up and giving us this dread of an AI taking over right there. But in terms of the cast, everyone is definitely playing their part really well. They are absolutely stellar characters in this in every step of the way. Ethan Hunt is definitely Ethan Hunt no matter what. We find him still hopeful in the midst of odds that are just stacked against in every single way possible. So that I can definitely continue to say is true of this film. Where I do start to begin to see problems with the film, and this is probably going to be the first criticism I have, is the pacing of the film is incredibly slow in quite a few parts here. There are bits and pieces of the plot that I feel could have been shortened, perhaps could have already been addressed in the last movie to some degree, or in some other instances, maybe just wasn't needed in the first place. Another problem I did notice in the film, and this one isn't to say the actors weren't good or just didn't deserve a spot in the film. There are too many characters in here that perhaps are taking up too much of the plot to get to the point of the film. I don't want to single out any particular actor in this film. They, by themselves, are stellar performers for what they're doing, but if you eliminated 1 or 2, maybe even 3 of these characters, you probably could have used that time to flesh out other characters that were more important in the film. Now, I will say one thing extra that definitely was a hint of positive for me. There are loads of nostalgic moments brought back into here, which I will say is a good thing. in many ways. There are nods to Mission Impossible 1. There are nods to Mission Impossible 3 in this movie that really help flesh out a lot of the story as well. So there is a positive to that. And there can be, at times, with nostalgia, a little bit of a negative to it. Because of that, it retcons a lot of different plot points from previous films and makes you scratch your head, where do we begin or end with some of these plots as to what happened and what didn't happen. One thing I've noticed with Ethan is that now you're questioning what is the truth and what's not the truth of what you saw in the previous films. Whether you take that as a good thing or a bad thing, that's entirely up to you. I personally am in the middle on that one. Like, again, some of these nods I'm talking about, one I'll mention in particular without spoiling anything, a certain character from the first film is brought back in this one, and it's kind of a surprising how he's used in this, and it's actually done very intelligently and adds something to the story really nicely. Again, nods to this are good, but sometimes they can also backfire a little bit. This is not one of them, though, that I will not mention in this case. In terms of where this fits with the entirety of the Mission Impossible series, I still am debating that too also, but for the most part, I would not put this even in my top 5 Mission Impossible movies, to be honest with you. I'm still going to mull on that as to where it lands, but it's not the greatest Mission Impossible, but that doesn't mean it's not a good film that you won't enjoy. Again, some of the points I mentioned earlier are at least my take on it for the most part. Maybe you might enjoy it for a good weekend at the cinema. This is something you want to definitely see in that regard. Overall, in terms of rating this film, I would put it definitely above mid. Excellent, definitely, it's not going to be that for me, but decent, I think, is a fair assessment I'm willing to give for the film. Again, this is not the worst movie I've seen. It doesn't get as bad as Mission Impossible 2. It's not near close to that, but it definitely isn't on par with Fallout, or even, I would even say, just alone with Dead Reckoning. I felt like Dead Reckoning was just stronger at the two films, which is interesting because it does remind me a bit of the same comparisons you get between Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, where one was a little bit more superior than the other, which that being Infinity War. So for the most part, those are my thoughts on the film. I don't think there's anything more I can add to this, but what are your thoughts? What do you think of the film itself? Do you think this is worthy of a Mission Impossible movie? Or did you think very negatively? I do want to hear negative thoughts too, because I don't want it to just be a one-sided conversation about what is good about the film. But we do want to have both sides of the argument on that. Like, share, and subscribe, and you best better believe I'll be back.